Hello and welcome to Hurt Less, Live More with me, JJ, the practical alchemist and psychiatrist, Dr. Mark Goulston. Now, this is the show where we look at some of the hurts that people experience in life and how they can maybe get through those hurts, how we can hurt less. And today we have a wonderful guest with us. And Mark, I'll let you do the introductions to our very great guest, Gretchen Villegas.
Boy, is she great. She's currently the CEO of Horizon, Empower the Orphaned. She has more than 22 years of experience specializing in mission-driven, innovative programs designed for the most vulnerable families in Latin America and East and Southern Africa. She does this through partnership development, impact scaling, and revenue growth. She's administered projects with a total worth of over $320 million funded by both public and private donors. In her current role, she's working to expand Horizon's global footprint and the impact of the micro-community model to rescue, restore, and empower orphaned, vulnerable children and at-risk youth. So you do so much for the world, Gretchen.
Absolutely.
You know, I was talking to someone about how, what we all need to be is kind in this world. You know, I mean, there's a shortage of kindness, and you just got it all over. So, how did you? This is Hurt Less, Live More. So, talk to us, Gretchen, about you and how you came to be drawn to this, and what was there about the hurt of this particular population that compelled you to do something about it, not just say something, but actually do something.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you, JJ. It's great to be here talking with you today. I grew up in a family where we didn't have much, right? And yet we would share what we did have with our neighbors and with other children who live close by our home, because my parents always reminded us of how you need to share what you have, because that's how they grew up, right? And that really brought me to move my life into spending 2 years as a Peace Corps volunteer, where I went to Suriname, South America. I lived in a village of 600 people, of about 400 of them were children, and there was no running water, there was no electricity, and we had many children there who I would say were well cared for because they had their families, right? And they may not have had shoes, but their mom and dad made sure that they had food every day. But then we also had children who would come in from the forest, right? And who would come in from the other villages nearby who didn't have family. They didn't have anyone to take care of them. And so as a Peace Corps volunteer, I'm reliving, right? I'm reliving what I grew up in. I'm reliving that thought that there were children close to me who didn't have families, right? Didn't have anyone to take care of them. And so that was my cue to be there for them, right? So here I am, white as can be, blonde and blue-eyed as can be, in this African village, right, in the middle of Suriname, South America, providing porridge, rice and beans to children who are coming in, and realizing that, okay, there needs to be some kind of a sustainable solution, right? And I think that, that is really where I think brought me into my career, brought me into saying, look, there are orphan, vulnerable children and families out there And there has to be something we can do if we just listen and learn to figure out how can we help them in a sustainable way.
I think that's it's extraordinary and wonderful. And the thing that I think about when I hear you talking is that it's not just the food on the table. It's not just the roof over the head. It's about something more, isn't it? How do you provide and help children get over that lack of family connection?
You know, a bond is created between a child and a family. And I think what has been learned by many in the past years is that when that bond is broken, children no longer feel safe. And when children don't feel safe, they act out. You know, they're not able to grow their own personality and their own self, right? Because what are they doing? They're protecting themselves every single day because they don't feel safe. So as you walk into the micro communities of Horizon, that's exactly what the micro community model in 2004 was created for. It was to give a space where orphaned and vulnerable children could enter, who would have an environment that was set up like having parents, like having a whole community taking care of them. And there were opportunities created to create bonds between the children and those who were inside the micro community caring for them. And it takes time, right? It took time because children are entering the micro communities of Horizon traumatized.
Yeah.
And that trauma doesn't go away overnight, right? We all know that. The trauma could be not having enough food every day. The trauma could be being separated from their parents because of HIV that's rampant, or malaria that's been rampant, or drug abuse, alcohol addiction. Children had been trafficked out as sex workers as well. There's so many things that children endure in areas where there is severe poverty. And our micro communities are in areas where there is severe poverty. So coming into the micro community provides that safe place that then we start our rescue, restore, and empowerment. And that rescuing really is that first step of looking for that safety for the child so that they can start becoming themselves, right? Being able to talk about what's happened to them.
Yeah, I love that idea of rescue, restore, and empower. I think that's wonderful. Those are the 3 steps, aren't they?
Could you share some stories? People remember stories because as you're describing these children, I'm just picturing they're traumatized, they're fearful. When they look at you, they don't know whether they can trust you because they've been traumatized. And, you know, how can I believe that you're actually here to help us or help me? And can you share some stories? And you could even bring up I remember this individual, and he or she was just so, they couldn't look you in the eye. They just looked at the ground, and how they came to taste hope.
Right. And Mark, you know, every child goes through their own journey of exactly what you're talking about. There are so many stories to tell, right? Let me just start with this one. We were at a community in Honduras, and it was a partner community that we were visiting, actually with our board of directors. And when we came in, we saw 2 young girls who were carrying babies. And of course, we weren't sure if they were carrying babies to help, right? The caregivers who were there or whatnot. And as we spent more time there, I'd say probably 2.5 to 3 hours. And we were sitting with the children, talking with the children. And finally, what came out was that the two 12-year-old girls who were there were holding their own babies.
Yeah.
And, I said to one, can I hold your baby? Your baby's beautiful. It looks just like you. And she let me hold the baby. And a little while later, she explained that this is my father's baby and my baby. And I said, well, are you happy here? Do you feel that people are taking care of you? And she said, yes, but I need to go home and take care of my mother. I mean, that just impacted me. And I shared that story with others afterwards. It really impacted me. A 12-year-old girl through incest has a baby, is in a safe house, right? A partner organization that we work with in Honduras. But yet the only thing she can worry about is going home to take care of her mother. And I stopped at that point because I felt that I couldn't go further to open up a trauma when I couldn't be there longer to work with her, right? That would have been the biggest disservice I probably could have done at that point in time. So I think that tells one story of kind of what happens, right? And the traumas that our children are going through. And at 12 years old, to be so grown up, to actually say, I expected her to say, yes, this is wonderful. I'm so glad I'm not at home. I want to stay here. I want to go to school. But no, she said, I need to go home and take care of my mother.
Yeah. So what we hear you saying there is that it's a really complex situation. No child is the same. I would have expected the same as you for the girl to have said, oh, I'm so relieved to be here because I'm being looked after. But no, she had the worry about her mother. Yeah. And so many children actually have to grow up very, very young.
They
and
do.
take on that caring responsibility. Yeah.
Gretchen, I'm a psychiatrist, so I dig in sometimes, and I put myself in your shoes in that story. And when I would hear these little girls talking about their baby from their father, I would feel this wave of helplessness and powerlessness. I would hopefully follow the medical maxim, do no harm.
Mm-hmm.
So don't open up something that where they have to go live in something like this.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm as committed or as strong as you are to saying, even if I don't have an answer, I've got to stay in this world. I've got to come in and do whatever I can, whenever I can, and be sensitive to the complex situations that they're living in. So this is just one of many stories. What goes on inside you when you hear stories like this?
It's exactly that. It is the powerlessness. I want to erase every bad thing that happened to them. That's what I want. I'm a mother of 3 girls as well. And when I think about, how they grew up and how I always knew where they were. I was worried about, that they weren't getting hurt. I was worried they were fed all the time. And, the mother in me, right, wants to take away all the hurt. I want to go back and erase all of it. And you can't. And so the acceptance of, okay, this is where we are today. You are now here with us in a safe place inside the micro community. And now you have a family working with you to figure out the way forward. And what I learned very early on, I think this is one of the hardest things for me to learn, is that I couldn't just come in and say, everything that's happened to you, it's wrong. And we just need to fix it. Because the children are coming out of a different environment, a different culture. They have grown up in families that made things that we don't feel are moral, right? And so working through all of that, it really does take psychiatrists and social workers who are from the area where the children come to really help through that process. And I had to learn very early on that I couldn't just say, that's wrong, change this, do that. No, number one was just listening, really, really listening for what worldview does the child have? In the child's mind, what is right and what is wrong? What was done that is okay versus what was done that was not okay. And then that's really your baseline of how to start working and helping a child rebuild self-esteem, rebuild self-confidence, learn from others and other stories about what is right and what's wrong. Because the dysfunction and the unsafe practices in so many of these homes, many children believe are what everyone does because they don't know any different.
Yeah, very powerful stuff there, Gretchen. We'll come back for more, but right now we have to take a short break. We'll be back with much, much more after this from our station sponsors.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
And you're listening to Hurt Less, Live More on UK Health Radio with me, JJ, the Practical Alchemist, Dr. Mark Goulston, and our guest, Gretchen Villegas. And Mark, I think you wanted to put something to the two of us.
There's a woman named Cicely Saunders. I'm not sure if you know the name. She started the whole hospice movement in this world. She started in England, I believe. And one of the things that she used to say in that population is, don't just do something, stand there.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Yeah. And I'm reminded of that's what you did, just the standing there. And you also said something, you don't want to open a trauma and not be able to do anything with it. One question I heard that's a very helpful question, for parents with their kids when they're hopefully kids are opening up is, what's that like for you? But I could see in these situations, you don't want to open up conflict in them if they're not having conflict. No, this is just the way things are. And I'm imposing me wanting to fix it on them. Mm-hmm. And so I need to hold back and, maybe it's just the experience. I'm thinking of that, because I did write this book on listening. Maybe it's just the experience of knowing that just they're saying anything to describe anything is helpful. And it may not appeal to our Western desire to gain closure, fix it, stop it. Mm-hmm. But just the process of they're actually saying something or describing something and are just listening is helpful.
Yeah.
Is that true? Would you say that's true, Gretchen?
I believe so. Everyone has their own journey. Everyone. Doesn't matter who you are. And you journey through the hurt to find closure or to find the positive in a different way, right? So I think you're right in that. I think one thing though that I would say the reason I personally would hold back is that we always want to make sure in our communities we have support for our children, because if a child, and we have examples of this really recent, if a child is starting to journey from the hurt, right, and trying to find their way past it, if we can't be there physically, right, and we can't verbalize with them in their language, they may get hindered on their way. We had 2 children recently. In Guatemala, we recently brought in 6 boys from the streets. They had been on the streets for quite some time. I think it was up to about 2 years. The government finally brought them through the system, and we said, yes, bring them to us. They had nowhere else to go. We had 4 of the boys who settled. Really, they just needed, it seemed, the mother figure, the mom, to be able to listen to them, right? And they became very obedient very quickly, right? There was food, there were toys, there was school. But 2 of the boys just couldn't settle in. They sent me photos of broken chairs, of broken windows and mirrors, of one boy climbing out the window, trying to get away. Another one had a knife from the kitchen and was trying to hurt the other one. And we talked a lot about how they're trying to journey. They're trying to get to the other side. But they had so much trauma, and they were older. These were the older boys. So these are, 13, 14 years old, starting to go through changes in their life and whatnot. And we had to make the decision for one of them specifically that we couldn't be there. Like we didn't have the capacity to do what this older boy needed. And so we actually had to ask the state to take the older boy to a place where he could have somebody there with him 24/7, because he was at a state of suicide. He was at a state of just not understanding. He was always worried somebody was going to try to hurt him, right? He was sleeping on the street. He had a knife in his hand under his pillow because he didn't know when someone was going to wake up and try to take his food away or take his clothes away or his shoes away, right? That's how he lived, right? And we found out that the second boy, after actually a medical procedure, I think it was a CAT scan, realized he had swelling in his brain. And we were able to get him the right medication. And the doctor believed that with that medication, he would calm. And he has since then. So I think, Mark, these are the situations where I'm always asking myself, and the staff are always asking ourselves, okay, can we be there for the child's journey? Like, can we make sure they're safe and they can make it through? Or is there something else we need to be doing, right? We don't know what's happened to the children before they come in. And most of the time, they're not talking.
As I'm listening to you, and I'm listening through the ears of our listeners, and many of them are working women, 25 to 45, and as I'm listening through their ears, I'm first of all, I'm just so glad that people like you are in the world. I'm trying to relate to this. I'm thinking there's something in what Gretchen's saying that I can relate to, but I'm not sure what it is. And if you are listening in, I think what we're hearing is what Gretchen is saying over and over again is go to where the other person is coming from. resist the temptation out of your own anxiety to jump to conclusions, to make assumptions, to jump in and fix it. And we're not just talking about the people that Gretchen's talking about. We're talking about the people in your families. We're talking about your aging parents who are having dementia or Alzheimer's. We're talking about all kinds of people. There's an amazing woman named Naomi Feil, and she started something called validation therapy. And whenever I give talks around the world, and I'll send this to you, there's this amazing video of her speaking to an African American woman who doesn't say anything, and what she does is validation therapy. Is she's just responding to what she's picking up, and she's going to where Gladys Wilson is, and she's touching her. She says, "I touched her on, gently on her cheek where a mother touches a child." And then she said, "I started to use religious music, and because sometimes music gets through." And I'll send you the video, and maybe we could play it. But towards the end of it, she's singing to Gladys, saying he's got the whole world in his hands. And she says to Gladys, who doesn't speak, "Can you sing with me?" And there's a point at which she says he's got the whole world, and Gladys starts to sing, "In his hands." Mm-hmm. And she starts to sing. And so I had Naomi Feil on my other podcast, My Wake Up Call. And it was interesting. She said, one of the sad things, because she works with this population, is that a lot of times when they're not making sense and they are just blithering, what's happening is because they are demented, they don't have the normal inhibitory things going on in their brain. So what's happened is all the baggage they've been carrying around for their whole life that they never dealt with, they're just verbalizing it. But then we shut them down because they're disruptive. We medicate them. And she said, it's really a shame because what we've done is they've lost their executive function in their brains. And so when they are verbal, they just seem to be blithering, but really they're just releasing what they inhibited over a whole lifetime. But I just thought it was fascinating.
And I watched that video. You did send it to me a while back, Mark, and I watched it. It's very powerful. And as I was listening to Gretchen talk, I was reminded of how, yes, this approach goes for anybody, not just children, but for anybody who's been going through any kind of difficulties or trauma, and meeting them where they are and then not forcing anything upon them. And the singing in the video that you're talking about there, Mark, it reminded me of my own mother, who had dementia before she passed on at a grand old age of 97. And she absolutely loved having a sing-song. And sometimes the carers who came in would sing with her. And she might not be making sense, or she might have been in a really bad mood, which, because you get frustrated, it seems, when you get into that state. But she could sing. And that brought a lot of joy and really eased her. It eased her pain. So it's a huge insight for me, one of the many insights at that time looking after her. So, yeah, music is a great healer. Didn't somebody say that once? A very famous philosopher.
Music hath charm to soothe the savage heart.
Shakespeare. There you go. I knew somebody would.
One of your guys, JJ.
Absolutely. He said a lot of good stuff there. Right. But now we're going to have to go for another break now. I'm sorry to say, because I'm really enjoying this and great stuff coming out today in this conversation. So we'll have a break now. Some messages from our station sponsors. We'll be back right after this.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
And we're back with me, JJ, the practical alchemist, Dr. Mark Goulston, and our guest today, Gretchen Villegas. And, we were talking about music before the break. And Mark, I think you had something to add on that.
Yeah, I remember that when I was in training and we were on the wards of stroke patients. There's a couple kinds of strokes. There's a Broca's aphasia, which makes it difficult to speak. And there's a Wernicke's aphasia, which you speak, but you don't make any sense. Mm-hmm. And so, and one of the ways you could deal with a Broca's aphasia is something called melodic intonation therapy, because the nerve tracts in your brain that sing are different than the ones that you speak. So you could take these Broca stroke patients and you could get them to sing what they wanted to say, and then you would train them to take the song out of it.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. So, but let's toss it back to you, Gretchen. I guess one of the things that I would love you to address is I think people who do what you do get as much or more from it than the people you're serving. That there's something so incredibly uplifting. I would imagine you have zero imposter syndrome going for you because you're so helping the world. How do we get the world? There's a saying, people don't do what's important. They do what they care enough about. You know, like it's important for me to eat better than I do and exercise better than I do, but I don't care enough about it to do as good a job as I should. Any thoughts about how to cause a shift in the world to care more about these people that are just suffering and need our help?
Mark, I feel very blessed to have the job I do every day. And I know that everyone else in Horizon who works tirelessly every day never complains. I've never heard a complaint. Doesn't matter how many hours a day. It doesn't matter what menial task each one of us are doing, included with everything else we're doing. For me, it provides purpose. And I know that not everyone can do what they love doing or feel like they have a purpose, right? A success every day in what they do. But I think that we as individuals can definitely all find purpose and success in everything that we do. And if we're not fulfilling it, there are many ways in which we can. Horizon Empower the Orphaned has opportunities, right, to help and support the children in many different ways, whether it's donations, whether it's volunteer, whether it's just to tell somebody about who we are, to read stories about the children and share about the lessons that were learned. All of that matters, right? And so I would say to everyone, if you're not finding your purpose and your success in what you're doing, there are many opportunities to do that. And I think that much of it, I would say, is found in the nonprofit world. It's found in the world where you can help others, right? Because of a connection you've had in your life. or because someone has given you something you feel so grateful for, you want to give back. And it all matters. It really, really matters. I have so many examples of being out in Guatemala, Honduras, and Kenya. And the children come to me and they are so grateful. They are so grateful for everything. It doesn't matter what it is. And I would say that the most I hear about is actually either receiving a letter from someone or someone's presence being there with them. It means a lot, right? It fills the safety that they're looking for in the world. Yeah.
Share with us the experience of when you see gratitude in the eyes of the people you're helping. What's that experience like where they don't even have to use words?
I cry. We all do. We all do. You don't have to use words. You really don't. Even with parents, many parents of the children who are taken out of poverty, right, or out of an abusive situation with alcohol or drugs, where there is rehabilitation in the family, and their parents come for visitation, you can see it in their eyes too, the gratitude, because we didn't just help to change their child's life, but also their life. And it does mean a lot. Yeah. A lot of heartfelt crying, hugging, definitely. A lot of hugging, for sure.
I'll say something. I've been more psychiatric than on most of our episodes. The oxytocin as a driving force in our life is becoming extinct. So dopamine is connected to pleasure. We seek pleasure. And more, especially with the internet, especially with immediate gratification, more and more pleasure and dopamine is fed by excitement, adrenaline. And you have to keep feeding the monster of adrenaline because when it goes away, you crash. So you got to keep feeding it. And the commercial world loves that. They can just sell you more and more and video games. But you can get to dopamine through oxytocin, through closeness, through intimacy, through tenderness. And it's much more lasting. It's much more lasting than adrenaline. I think I shared this incident. JJ's heard it, but you haven't. I remember I was going for a walk in Santa Monica, California, which has a great homeless, large, not a great homeless population. And there was this middle-aged African-American man who'd obviously had a stroke, and he was just scuffling along. He had worn bedroom slippers. One of his arms was paralyzed. I think his left arm was hanging, but he wasn't intruding on anyone's space. He wasn't there with a sign, please give. He wasn't there in front of a Whole Food store trying to make you feel guilty and whatever. He was just, there was something noble about his just dealing with his pain. And I was there just walking, playing in my head with my master of the universe, thing, and self-congratulatory of what I was going to do next. And I walked past him and it just hit me. And I got about 25 yards past him and I came back to him and I got in front of him and I put a $50 bill in his right hand and he held it up and he looked at it and he looked at me and he looked at it and he looked at me and he started to cry and he said, I love you. Mm-hmm. That was the best $50 I'd spent in a long time. Mm-hmm. And I still remember it enough to share it with you. And I have no idea what I was thinking about before I ran into him.
Well, sometimes those spontaneous gestures are the best, aren't they? Without even thinking about it, you just did what felt right. Mm-hmm. Communicating with your heart and doing what spontaneously comes to you, it can be so powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you're listening in to this episode, I would challenge you every day to be kind to someone who has much, much less than you. And I don't know what form that kindness would take. You decide it. And if you did that every day for a week, something that you haven't been doing, I would challenge you to think about how you felt at the end of the week. Because I think there's a good chance that you might feel better in ways than going out and trying to get more and have more will do for you.
And it doesn't have to be very much either, I think, Mark. It just reminded me of something the weekend where I was buying gas for the car. And I try to always make it land, on a neat number, like £40, £50 or whatever. And of course, as ever, this time it landed on £50 and a penny. And I walked into the store, into the kiosk to pay. And I'd forgotten that I'd taken all the change out of my main purse and put it into a change purse. And I'd left that in the car. And so I only had £20 notes. And I was saying, oh, no. And she said, she pulled out a penny out of a tray or something that she had of just change. And she said, here you go, and put a penny in. And that made me feel so warm and lovely. It was a penny. Mm-hmm. But it was just the sheer act of her saying, don't you worry about that, happens to us all. Here you go. I'll sort that for you. You don't want a pocket full of change now. So I think it doesn't have to be a huge thing, does it?
Yeah, but before the pandemic, I started a movement which we may reawaken called What Made You Smile Today? Hashtag WMYST. And I have a TEDx talk, What Made You Smile Today? And we may reawaken it. It just seemed like it was insensitive to say to people who were so stressed out, what made you smile today? But people may be able to do it. And the other day I was about to turn in a car, and I was at this place, and the way you do this is anyone who has served you, you see they have a name tag, but they're really not a person. They're a function. They're an appliance, but they do have a name tag. And there was this African-American woman. And at the end, I said, Maria, thank you. Yeah. My name's Mark. She knew that. I have a question for you. No, you didn't get into any trouble. What made you smile today? And you have to say it with the desire to know. And by the way, when you do this, they look up to the ceiling because they want to taste it. Mm-hmm. And then when they look at you, it's different. And she said to me, I've had a bad couple days. In fact, I've been crying in the bathroom, when I have a break. And I called my dad and my grandpa to tell them. And 30 minutes later, they both came in to see me. And so I'm feeling better. But it's, we can all do little things like that. So Absolutely. What made you smile? What made you smile today, Gretchen?
Oh my gosh. When I dropped my daughter off for school this morning, and she got out of the door, but before she closed it, she looked at me and she said, Mommy, I know you have a busy day, but thank you for bringing me to school. I know.
Oh, that's lovely.
She stopped to thank me. Normally it would have been a slam door and she ran off. So,
wow.
I think those reflections are really nice. Yeah. And what it is it's a reflection. It's stop and think about where you are in the moment, right? Instead of just running on with our life. So those are really good lessons for all of us.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah. JJ, what made you smile today? Practical alchemist, you?
Oh, what made me smile today? Well, I think,
And you can say it hasn't happened yet.
well, no, I had a lovely phone call from a friend who I haven't spoken to for a long time. It was really great to catch up, and we did smile a lot, and we had a lot to laugh about. So that was what made me smile today. Yeah. Good friends are a great tonic.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I would love to have you continue the movement. I remember in the TEDx talk I gave, there was someone from India who, I guess I was having some email exchange with, and I typed back to him a rule. I have a question for you. What made you smile today? And he writes back, no one as important as you has ever typed my name.
Mm.
So every day I go to my computer and I touch where you typed my name.
Wow.
That changed his life. And I'm not that important, trust me.
But it is these small things. I mean, I'll say it again, it doesn't have to be a huge thing to us, right? And we don't have to be spending loads of money. We don't have to be, getting massive grants from governments, although what Gretchen's doing with her organization is fantastic, but it doesn't have to be that. We don't have to beat ourselves up if we can't match that, right?
Yeah. So Gretchen, take a little time, and are you open to people following up with you and your organization, seeing how they might be able to help? And if so, how can they do that?
Absolutely. So go to www.empowertheorphaned.org. And there's lots of information and contact information as well. We have great opportunities for volunteering, for giving donations, small as well as larger donations. And it's really just really great to hear from all of you. I think we get lots of ideas, right, on things that we can do. We have a gala every year in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where our co-founders come, and we really celebrate everything that we've been able to accomplish that year. So if you want to meet Jim Pesky and Daryl Heller, as well as the rest of our team, it will be in September, like the end of September this year. So definitely look into that as well.
Well, that's fantastic. There's absolutely no doubt that you're doing some fantastic work there, Gretchen. And I have had a look at your website, and it is really worth visiting because you can see all the things that you're doing there, and some great pictures of some of the kids who you've been helping, and some people who have gone on to do really great things, really good things with their lives. So wonderful to hear that from you. So that is bringing us to the end of the show, unfortunately. Mark, great stuff from you once again. Great wisdom from you. Gretchen, thank you so much for being with us. If you're listening to this show on your podcast platform, then do like it and subscribe, and do all the things that'll help us get this show on the road, as it were, and also share it, because you never know who might hear something that they need to hear by listening to what we have to say. So do that, please. And also do come back and join us another time for more Hurt Less, Live More here on UK Health Radio. For now, it's goodbye from all of us.